Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay. So now what we need to show is that suppose C of omega is a subset of A. Okay. If C of omega is a subset of A, then A is common knowledge. All right. That's what we need to show now. So we now show that if C of omega is a subset of A, then A is common knowledge, in omega. Now, what we want to show is that if C of omega is a subset of A, then A is common knowledge in omega. Okay, that's the claim we want to show. But remember, C of omega is a more specific set as compared to A. A is more general, C of omega is a subset. Okay. So, and one of the properties of common knowledge that we saw, that if something specific is common knowledge, then something more general than that is also common knowledge, right, in the same state of the world, right. So, if it is common knowledge that if it is common knowledge that it is raining right now, it would also be common knowledge that the road is wet or that the humidity is high or anything that is implied by the fact that it is raining right now, right. All of those things are also common knowledge. Okay. So, therefore, it's enough to show that C of omega itself is common knowledge. If once C of omega itself becomes common knowledge, right, then we will be done, because once C of omega itself is common knowledge in omega, then any superset of C of omega will also be common knowledge. Superset of C of omega will also be common knowledge in omega. Okay. So this thing that I have written here, what we will actually show is, in place of this, what we will show is, we will actually show that C of omega is common knowledge in omega. Okay. And the way to show C of omega is common knowledge in omega is something related to what you were asking. Okay. So, what I want you to now reflect on is what do you think is going to be this set? Take any player I, okay, let I be any player. What is this? What are the states of the world in which player I knows C of omega, the connected component corresponding to some state of the world omega? So, eventually we are going to show this is common knowledge. So, you can even guess what this would probably turn out to be. This would turn out to be C of omega itself, because then it will become independent of player I, and then it will also end up being common knowledge. But you know, we can be more intelligent than that. So, let's actually show this. Okay. So, let's look at C of, so let's fix a player I. Alright. Now, if you look at this set Fi of omega, take any omega dash, take omega dash belonging to Fi of omega. So, omega is this fixed state of the world that we are considering, and omega dash is another state of the world that player I cannot distinguish from omega. Which means what? Omega dash has to therefore be in C of omega itself, has to be, right. So, which means that you take C of omega is always going to be contained in this. Let me write it like this. So, Fi of omega dash, where omega dash ranges over C of omega. So, you take all states of the world in C of omega, okay, So, all states of the world that are in this particular connected component, take Fi for those states of the world, they are all going to be in C of omega itself, because player I cannot distinguish between anything, any element, any of the elements in Fi of omega dash, right. So, there is always going to be an edge between all those. In fact, that subset of vertices in fact forms a clique in the graph, right. So, this is necessarily going to be, this is a subset. So, what is, so in fact, I do not need to write this. So, let us write it like this. So, I will write this more neatly. So, take any omega dash in C of omega and omega double dash in Fi of omega dash. Take any omega dash in C of omega and omega double dash in Fi of omega dash. Okay. Now, player I cannot distinguish between omega dash and omega double dash. So, therefore, omega double dash is also in C of omega, which means in particular C of omega is contained in this union. Sorry, C of omega contains this union. Okay, all of these are contained in C of omega, but there is something that is trivially, this is almost tautological here, because what this in particular see Fi of omega dash contains omega dash itself, right. So, this is union of omega dash singletons omega dash, where omega dash belongs to C of omega. And what is this left hand side equal to? This is by definition equal to C of omega. So, what this means is, if you take the Fi's corresponding to various points in C of omega for any player I, you take the Fi's corresponding to various points in C of omega, take the union, that becomes C of omega. So, which means C of omega is always the union of elements of partitions of a player, and this is in fact true for every player. Take any player, C of omega is structured in such a way that it is formed by taking the union of his, the elements of his partition, some elements of his partition. Okay. So, and the way C of omega arranges itself is that somehow these, the unions of the elements of his partition become C of omega, and this is true for every player. So, C of omega can be chopped in various ways and they somehow become the elements of partitions for each player. Okay. Now, the interesting thing here is that what does this imply? This implies that for one is that this needs a whole lot of coincidence with the partitions. In the absence of the partitions nicely aligning with each other, right, you will not, the only set that will turn out to be common knowledge is what? Is Y itself. Y will turn out to be, because Y is always the union of the elements of partition. Okay. So, if you want something smaller, something more specific to end up being common knowledge, then it has to be that the partitions of the players have to agree have to align in a certain, in a nice way. Okay. So this means that C of omega is equal to the union of Fi of omega dash over all omega dash in C of omega, and this is true for this is true for all players I in N. Okay. Now, if this is true for all players I in N, then we are almost done. So, firstly, C of omega is the union of elements of a partition, which means what is going to be Ki of C of omega? It is going to be C of omega itself. Yeah. So, this is going to be C of omega, and this is true for all I, for every player. So, which means therefore that naturally, therefore, if you take Ki1, Ki2 dot Ki r of C of omega, that is always going to be C of omega. Means omega belongs to Ki1 of Ki2 of dot C of omega. Which means C of omega is common knowledge in this is the main thing we wanted to show. When now that C of omega is common knowledge in omega, since A is a superset of C of omega, A is also common knowledge in omega. Okay. So, this is how the sets that are common knowledge get structured, and this also has implications on a very beautiful result regarding agreement between players. Okay. How can about whether when can two players agree on a certain fact? Okay, because after all agreement is based on knowledge, and whether players can agree or not depends on how they are what kind of information they are getting. And so, the way the partitions get created and the way the partitions align with each other decide whether players can actually agree or not. Okay. So, and now agree means you can, again I do not mean agree in a kind of emotional or social way, but agree in a technical way, you know. So, so for this I need to define for you what agreement and so on means, but essentially that is it is essentially something like what is commonly known as consensus and so on. Okay.